So there's this famous myth in the Hart household. Well, I can't call it a myth because I can't confirm nor deny it, but we have this story that our father has told for years, where you were the last person to ever punch Muhammad Ali and never have a punch returned.
So I've been told. Yeah, that's the story.
So the story being that in 1990 in Seattle, they had the Goodwill Games, which was kind of like another form of the Olympics. Like they basically tried to recreate that. And so Muhammad Ali showed up, for the games. And it just so happened the same day he was arriving at the airport, we were going to pick up our Nana from Philadelphia. And you would have been about 3 at the time, if I recall. Yep. And you were very, very tired.
Yeah.
And so our father was carrying you. And he happened to be the first person at baggage claim to notice the great Muhammad Ali. And as our fathers want to do, he, of course, went up and approached him and talked to him for a bit. And, he was very respectful of the man. He didn't barge in and take up his time. He just, noticed this great man and wanted to be, and say hi and, give him his respect. Well, as the story goes, apparently, he tried to wake you up to introduce you to the champ. And as the great one leans in to kind of give you one of those coochie coochie coo things, you wake up and your first instinct is to throw a left hook.
Yeah. The way Dad described it was I bopped him on the chin, and he just had this light go up in his eyes where he's like, "Oh man, I remember that." And yeah, I guess baby Trevor is somebody you don't want to mess with.
Yeah, so the trivia question, it's Trevor Berbick probably, but
probably
in our household it will forever be Trevor Hart.
Yeah.
And again, more than likely, this is a fictional story. That
I have no idea, but Dad did have a lot of details. He did say that Nana did come in time to see Muhammad, and
I do remember Nana seeing him. That was great because she ran up to him like he was a kid from the neighborhood.
Yeah, the greeting was, "Oh, Muhammad!"
Exactly,
and she has to put her hands on his cheeks, and
he was he handled it with such grace, and we were very fortunate, actually. We got to see him before the Parkinson's really kicked in, too. So it was, we actually got to see a small sliver of the great man.
Yeah, obviously I have no memory of this incident, but I don't know if an autograph was ever exchanged or anything.
We did.
He got a Islamic pamphlet or something from
him. Well, because what he had done is he had actually filled out a number of autographs. He had basically used the flight to just make them out because he knew. He was going to be approached, and as any celebrity who goes in public. So, but he took the time to do that, and after pretty much right after we were leaving, a line started to form of people who wanted to come up and shake his hand, and he was a great man, and obviously we just lost him, and so I guess we're going to take the time here today to share some memories of him and basically just discuss what effect boxing has had in our lives, as we're normally do on this thing. So I guess the biggest treat, unfortunately, of the man's passing is being able to actually see some of his fights again on television, actually realize how big boxing was at one point, and how great the fights were.
Absolutely. He was active during, probably the greatest era of heavyweight boxing, when it was at its cultural high point, I guess, in terms of profile. Yeah,
because, see, people in our age range, kind of that, I'm in early 30s and, you're in your late 20s. A lot of our peers grew up with more of the Tyson era. Or, if you really delved into it, you got into the De La Hoya thing. And, there were some fantastic fights in those later weight classes in modern times. But going back, that was back when the heavyweights were usually, around 200, 215, a little more...
If that.
Yeah, very athletic, actually had a lot of endurance. It was less about taking your head off and more about, outboxing somebody.
Well, yeah, it was very technical, and, the body type of the fighters was, they were able to move around in that fashion. They had stamina. It was less about power punching and taking the other guy's head off.
Yeah, and Ali, of all else, when it comes to finesse, I mean, he brought something to that weight class that I can't think of anyone else who moved like that.
Neither can I. I mean, it's so many of the things he did. Like, I'd hate to be a kid like growing up wanting to fight like him, because it's a recipe for disaster. Because so many of the things that he did that were intrinsic to his personal style were contrary to, you know, the fundamentals of boxing. That he did all the wrong things, but he was special and he could do those things. It's like Michael Jordan with his tongue hanging out playing basketball. You just don't do that unless you're Michael Jordan.
Well, I was going to say, I guess the closest thing you could see to it is like a Floyd Mayweather in this era, too, who's just, it's impossible to teach somebody to fight like Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
Only a very specific person can do that, and he happens to be that person. It's fascinating, too, though, because I guess the tragic part of Ali's as a fighter came at the end of his career. And that was the kind of the part that, because I guess what's fascinating is realizing now when I look back on it and hearing how my father spoke of him as a fighter, like it didn't seem like he was that big of a fan of him. Like not so much, obviously you respected the man for all, you know, he did for humanity.
Yeah.
But in terms of just like as an athlete, you either like him or you hate him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, because of what you were just saying, like that he was one of the only people who could do that sort of thing, you could see how a traditionalist boxing fan might not be that big of a fan of somebody who can do everything wrong and still succeed like that. Mm-hmm. But also just seeing how towards the end of Ali's career, he also was one of the first guys to really like clearly be past his prime and being propped up by outside sources, which are pretty much what I blame for the downfall of the sport in this era.
Uh-huh. Yeah, later in his career, when the rope-a-dope stuff started to get out of hand, when I don't know, it started to become transparent that, you know, the skills that made him famous, like they were starting to fade, the attributes were starting to fade. It was starting to get to a point where it was like raw courage and determination, which is a beautiful thing, but you know, it's a sport where the other guy's job is to kill you, basically.
Right. And even with the rope-a-dope thing, I know with our father, like he truly believed, and understanding how corrupt that sport is and was, he really believed that there were some handlers who would loosen the ropes at times and make it even more effective than just, you know, bouncing off or holding yourself back there and allowing the guy to punch himself out. Yeah,
and I mean, that's not to say that doing that is easy. Like having the courage and having the ability to stand there and
absolutely, and I mean you're still getting pummeled. Like,
but
it's just being pummeled at, you know, a slightly less.
No, but when you come in there and that's your plan A, there's something wrong.
Right. It's I guess it would be the equivalent of a UFC fighter, the guys who lay on their back and just kind of wait until somebody comes up.
I mean, if you want to keep things tied in with Ali, I mean Antonio Inoki, the Japanese wrestler, the circus sideshow match between the boxer and the wrestler. Inoki's his strategy was to lay on his back and do low kicks to Muhammad's shins, and I think he did some serious damage, caused some blood clots, which
I do recall that. I always forget about that fight, but
it was a circus, and it. From my standpoint, it was shameful. It was shameful display. But, you know, that was Inoki's mindset. I'm going to win no matter what. And it was supposed to be a stupid exhibition that you're not supposed to try to win. It was supposed to be
Thunder Lips and Rocky.
Yes, it was supposed to be Thunder Lips and Rocky. And he tried to, like, treat it as a serious competition of strong style, like samurai spirit. It's like, no, God, no. He's a national treasure. What are you doing? And in exchange, Ali gave him his theme music, the Inoki Bomaye.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw it, but there was a movie. It was called The Greatest.
Okay.
Starring Ali as himself.
No, I never knew that existed.
They filmed dialogue scenes interspersed between like footage of his actual fights, and they put dramatic music over it. I forget when it came out. It was probably the late 70s. But they had this music that is like it's awesome. It's a really amazing piece of music. It's definitely inspired by the Rocky theme. And Inoki's like I guess his prize for competing in that circus sideshow match was to steal that music as his entrance music for forevermore.
It's so funny, the things you learn.
No, yeah, there's your weird trivia for the day.
Yeah, certainly. But yeah, no, it's just fun, like, actually seeing these old fights and realizing that there was a period of time where boxing was the biggest sport going.
Oh, yeah.
And it really just puts into perspective just how big of a deal it was that Ali not only gave up 3 good years of his career, but also that he refused to, be anything but himself, which unfortunately in modern day era of athletes, I mean, sporting, like, you can't do that.
Yeah, I was about to say, in terms of accomplishment, that has to be, you got to tip your hat to that. I mean, the man lost his physical prime, and on most of his most famous fights, like almost all of them, occurred in his comeback phase.
Right.
After the 3 years refers to the time when he refused to join the army during the Vietnam draft.
Right.
And he opted out, and he lost his boxing license.
Which is one of the biggest travesties. I mean, the fact that you're talking about literally the heavyweight champion of the world.
He lost his late 20s. That is your physical prime.
You're going to draft him into the army.
Yeah, and I think he had 1 or 2 tune-up fights before challenging for the world title, which he was holding at the time he lost his license.
Right.
And, Joe Frazier is not an easy opponent to try to take that belt from.
No, not at all. But it's absolutely ridiculous to think about that. And it's also tragic in the sense that it makes you wonder, like, how much of that pummeling he received at the hands of Larry Holmes was fueled by not getting a chance to earn his maximum income from fighting.
Yeah, I do recall reading that some of his late game fights, like the Larry Holmes and the Trevor Berbick fight, were conducted because of his financial issues.
Yeah, I imagine.
Which is sadly the case for a lot of fighters in their later years.
Yeah, but also just, like, imagining, like, a guy who just knew he was the greatest and seeing, like, the kind of money that gets thrown around as, years have progressed. Because you have to imagine guys like Berbick and Larry Holmes made more money per fight just because of the era they were in and with innovations like pay-per-view and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I imagine that was a lot of what compelled him to fight way past his prime. And unfortunately, too, he was one of the first guys where you really did see the handlers having that negative impact. I mean, we kind of touched on that, but I think that was really the root of why our father wasn't too big of a fan of him as a fighter.
Yeah.
Was just for that reason, like seeing a guy who's clearly being propped up by people, being told, yeah, you're still the champ, you're still the greatest. That's a great mentality to have, and because he lived that, from day one till the end.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, like you said, a sport where literally your opponent's job is to take your head off, you got to know when to duck out.
Yeah, I mean, I think boxing, more so than any other athletic competition, is very much built around the old lion being eaten by the young lion.
Of course, yeah.
And you see this with guys like Bernard Hopkins, B-Hop. Like, I think my dad has the same objection to him. I mean, B-Hop's even older. He's like 50 now.
Jeez.
And it's the same kind of story, though. Like, very, very nuanced, very technical style fighting, but they've never really been beaten up. Like,
right.
Ali had, he's extremely tough. Like, he had so much grit, and all the greats do. Like, you look at all the great fighters, most of them have amazing chins. That plays into how great they were.
Yeah, you can't be a great fighter without a great chin.
Yeah, you basically have to have everything. You have to have the total package, and Ali definitely did. Some of the beatings he took were incredible, but the amount of pain he expressed in the ring was muted. Like, you never really saw him human, saw him vulnerable.
Right, and to be honest, that was always a thing that really appealed to me in boxing, was getting to see that raw part of humanity. I mean, those were the things that I enjoyed the most watching fights with Dad, was him cueing me into things like, okay, this guy's hurt. And you can tell because, he's talking shit. Like, it was just one of those things where, it's how you react to pain and how you react to things, like how you dance your way out of being in trouble and knowing it. You know?
Yeah, so much of it is about, it's like a poker game. It's, you put on a poker face and you're basically lying to your opponent. You're showing them that, hey, I'm still good, I'm still fresh, my legs are solid. But in reality, you're in God knows what sort of pain, and you're fatigued and you're in all sorts of danger, but you're not showing it.
Right.
And like the famous end of the Thrilla in Manila, I think it was, they got to the 15th round, they didn't start it.
Right.
And Eddie Futch threw in the towel for Joe Frazier. Of course, Joe Frazier protested because he's Joe Frazier.
Right.
but Ali, like immediately when it was announced that Joe Frazier had retired on his stool, like he just visibly deflated.
He did. That's actually...
It's just like, thank God it's over, but until it was certain that he had won, that the fight was over, he was not going to show any of that.
Absolutely. Like, you actually can see that, like, completely. He was done.
Yes. I mean, the famous quote is, that was the closest to dying I ever experienced. And,
right.
You know,
I mean, that fight was amazing. And
100 degrees.
But in looking back on his fight in retrospect, I think it's pretty telling that the UFC made their big announcements recently about Brock Lesnar and Conor McGregor both returning to the octagon.
I see. I didn't know that until just now.
And I think that's really telling, though, of how fantastic Ali's fights were, because I think that they realized, holy shit, everybody's going to be exposed to this, because obviously every news channel and every website is going to have a tribute to Ali, if it's sports related in any way.
Oh, yeah.
As they should. And I think that the UFC is concerned that people are going to see how amazing that sport could be and fear that, it might come back. Because clearly UFC's in the driver's seat right now, but there is that chance that, you know, especially now that the world's getting smaller, you're starting to see people from, you know, different countries, more international fighters who have that same drive, that same want of the old guys. Because that's part of the issue now, too. I mean, boxing was always a sport that was the poorest fall into it, and that's how they rise, you know, in society, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's your meal ticket. That's your ticket to a new avenue in life.
Yeah, but now we have other avenues. I mean, hell, you're almost better off making rap videos on YouTube and posting them up. Honestly, like, I think that would be easier to get discovered than it would be to try to be a fighter from a young age. And it's not just for a black guy. I mean, anybody. Like, make a YouTube video of anything. I mean, you have more of a chance to make a living doing that than you ever do as a professional athlete. And let alone, like, why wouldn't you choose a different sport like soccer or basketball or baseball?
One where you don't get punched in the fucking face.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you have that option.
Punched in the face, or, you know, making some music on the YouTubes.
Seriously. So, I mean, yeah, you just have to wonder, like, who even gets compelled to do that. But then you realize, oh, yeah, now we have a more diverse crowd of people coming from, you know, smaller countries in Europe. Mexico will always produce fighters.
Yeah, it's ingrained in the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, then there's always going to be, you know, African athletes that people mold, take under their wing.
Yeah, Ghana, I don't know about now, but, like, in the early 2000s, there were a handful of fighters from Ghana that apparently there is some culture for it there.
Yeah. And I imagine, too, like, the smaller fighters, too. Like, I know in Japan it's a very popular sport, but just at weight divisions that don't appeal to anybody except for probably smaller Asian folks.
Well, Japanese fighters have a poor reputation for not leaving home because they're an island nation that they kind of keep to their own, and titles very rarely are contested outside of Japanese soil. So it's, I don't know, it's a popular sport, but it's also looked down upon in some ways. I think you experienced that a little bit when you were living over there. Yeah, it's
definitely considered, like, you know, to be a violent sport, as it is.
It's a weird niche hobby. It's like, I mean, they have that word otaku, like, it's fanatic. Like, it's like, why would you pursue this? Why would you pursue this violent sport when you have so many options available to you?
Well, and I think some of that, too, is actually the opposition of some of the martial arts within the culture, which, I'm not saying it's a stereotype that everybody there knows karate or anything, but it is true that it's a form of physical education in school. Like, and almost everybody at some point takes some form of a martial art, just as you're growing up. And I think when you compare that to what boxing is, which, yeah, you get a damn good workout, but so much of it is just, you know, being brash and confident and being willing to turn your face into a hamburger in order to beat the other guy.
Well, I mean, it's actual competition. as opposed to martial arts that can be taught or instructed in such a way as to be like more focused around personal development.
Absolutely.
Boxing is like, it's either an aerobic workout or you're trying to compete.
Yeah.
And that's very against most Japanese cultural concepts. Like, you don't try to be better than the people around you. You try to be in harmony.
Right.
And it's a very individual sport as well.
Yeah. That is always a factor, too, with boxing, too. It's so much easier to get involved with team sports as a whole. You know, it's, I mean, for me, honestly, like, that's what I enjoyed team sports because you could hide.
Yeah, very true.
Like, I hate being on stage. Like, even, like, with recording these things, like, it's a very awkward feeling being, like, the only voice or the only person on stage in any capacity. And when you're on a team sport, you can be part of the winning and not really do much.
You can be the guy in the outfield that's digging for gold up his nose.
Yes. I mean, and truth be told, that's what most of us do. Like,
well, yeah.
In our period of playing sports, you know, for however long it lasts. I mean, hell, I played softball up until my 30s. And towards the end there, I was totally content to just show up and sit at the far end of the bench and tell jokes. Like, much more than I wanted to, you know, run and throw and hit stuff.
Well, you're emotional support for the team. You're playing your part.
Yeah, I'll keep telling myself that. Yeah, it's not Major League the movie where you can be the jokester or whatever and have a role. Like, you actually got to contribute at certain points. So, which is an athlete mentality, you know, and that's what drives a lot of these guys. Mm. But going back, like I was saying with the UFC stuff, like, I think, like, people argue that Conor McGregor is one of those guys who's totally genuine and that's why people love him. I don't see it. I think it's completely fake. I think that, you know, the retirement thing was a complete joke. It was so obvious he just wanted either more money and or an excuse to try to challenge Mayweather for a fight, which was probably another thing that influenced UFC to open up their wallet for the guy.
Well, yeah. I mean, if that were to go down, that would definitely be contested in a boxing ring with boxing gloves under boxing's rules, probably on a network like Showtime or HBO. Right. As opposed to on like Fox or a UFC network. Right.
So I think he was just really has a good marketing team. We'll just say that. Compared to a guy like Ali who literally practiced what he preached. I mean, he totally was all about, you know, speaking his mind and standing true to it. Mm-hmm. And like we were saying, it cost him money because at a certain point, like, it's hard to be a pitchman or whatever if you have such a polarizing view on certain issues. Mm. I mean, imagine if LeBron James were to come out tomorrow and say that he supported, you know, a higher minimum wage for the nation.
Fan base divided.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the whole thing. It's easy to see how an athlete would, you know, avoid being opinionated in that sense just because, like, they're just taught, like, you know, maximize things, make the most, win the most, you know, whatever. So if the agent comes up to you and says, no, just be as neutral as possible and you're guaranteed to make hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the myth of Michael Jordan that is finally coming to light. That, you know, in our era growing up, he was just this amazing, you know, mythical figure. Mm-hmm. That, you know, he never seemed to lose. He always, you know, was the best. And nobody realized until later that he was a huge asshole.
Yeah.
Nike just did a great job of covering up all of his personality traits by, you know, making these commercials that portrayed him as this mythical figure.
Yeah.
And, you know, look, he held true to it. I mean, he won it. He was probably the most dominant basketball player ever until LeBron James, arguably, and even Steph Curry now. But, I mean, Jordan's the best. Mm. But, I mean, if he had played in an era of social media, do you think that he would have been able to hide like that?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, so rather than, like I said, with Muhammad Ali, who was brash and would have been the first person out, you know, saying whatever he felt about any issue.
Ali with a Twitter account. Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's a terrifying prospect, but God. Also an amazing one at the same time.
Every 30 seconds, just something.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can see, though, why, like, the money that controls all of these things, why they would want these guys to just, you know, lay back and just portray themselves as neutral as possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, not to go off on a tangent or anything, but there's a fighter in particular of the modern era, in the past 10 years, Victor Ortiz,
yeah,
who I've always hated this guy. Like, I mean, he's been in some amazingly entertaining fights. He's been one half of the equation. Like, his fight with Marcos Maidana was incredibly entertaining. Lots of knockdowns, good throwdown, and he quit on his stool. And his fight with Andre Berto, the first one, not the second one. I always felt like he was groomed, he was handled, and it was really obvious to me. And it upset me to see this guy who seemed like he was having an image manufactured for him.
Yeah.
Like, it seemed like every time he was interviewed, it was very choreographed, it was very rehearsed, it was very Roman Reigns-esque.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's how I felt watching Arturo Gatti. I mean, Arturo Gatti was my favorite fighter.
He was a monster in his personal life.
But the thing was like, when he first came out, he was kind of groomed to be this anti-De La Hoya.
Yeah.
Like, he was, the guy they tried to emphasize, he's this Italian guy from Jersey.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, he's a Canadian guy.
Yeah, he's from Montreal.
And I think you really saw it when he started to lose, because at first he looked like that classic 1940s fighter.
Yes.
He had the very the greasy hair.
Yeah,
he had the very Italian presence about him. Then all of a sudden he loses a fight, and all of a sudden he shows up and he has these Indian feather tattoos at the base of his neck, and he bleaches his hair. And you could really see, I mean, we've discussed this in the past, but not only is it the impact of losing a fight, but also I think that was him just kind of breaking away from look, don't make me into something, let me be myself. And I think that really the fights with Mickey Ward, that really became who he was, and really showed everything he stood for.
It's really easy to forget that. I mean, those fights are probably his most famous. I mean, he had at least 2 other Fight of the Years, but those are the ones that most casual fans especially, remember him for. But they came very late in both of those guys' careers. Actually.
Oh yeah, they were both basically done.
Yeah, it was kind of like an injection of fire for both of them. It kind of brought them back up. But if you want to establish more parallels between Gatti and Ali, both of them kind of ended up propped up by the end of their career. Like Gatti especially, HBO probably made so much money off of him, because I feel like the late stages of his career were spent floundering and trying to play every angle conceivable to keep this guy in the ring.
Right.
Because his physical conditioning was fading really, really fast. I mean, he'd always had a swelling and a bleeding problem. I mean, the joke
he was bleeding, walking
down the ramp. If Gotti's not bleeding when he's walking down the ramp, it's not right. But
and from what I know, I mean, I don't mean to speak ill of the dead in Gotti's case, but I recall he had some substance abuse problems as well.
all through his career. But his fighting, his handlers, they taught him how to box to overcome Mickey Ward.
Right.
And that was the plan. Teach this slugger how to box. And it just wasn't working. And it seemed like he got locked into that pattern, and they just kept pushing him out there against the softest competition imaginable, Thomas Damgaard.
Yeah.
The guy was from the Netherlands. He fought nobody, and I think that was his last win.
I think the issue with it too, and you're seeing this with the UFC right now, where it starts taking on more of a WWE element to it, where it's less about the actual compelling fight and more about how much can we talk this up. I mean, there's a reason why they're basically grasping anyone like CM Punk. They were trying to be headlining, I think, one of their main events. And I think the same thing kind of happened with HBO and Gotti, where it was, and I think unfortunately he was the type who fell into it too, where he realized, the fans want to see me get pummeled and fight back.
Yeah.
And that was always what hurt his career, was he could be a fine fighter when he wanted to. I mean, he proved it by winning those last 2 fights with Mickey Ward, but you would see him get suckered into a lot of just brawling for the sake of brawling.
I mean, his last few losses were ugly to watch. He gave his last drop in the ring, basically. Carlos Baldemir basically just ran over him, and Baldemir was fucking Frankenstein. He was slow as shit. I mean, he had a really long unbeaten streak, but he was nothing special.
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably 20 pounds heavier than Gotti, and that didn't help. And I think Alfonso Gomez was the one to retire him, and he split his lip. It was ugly. He didn't look right. you could tell that he was done. He wasn't moving right. He was all the shots that he'd normally shrug off or just walk through. You could tell it was affecting him. And if a casual observer, you know, standing in the kitchen watching the TV can tell that the guy's hurt, the guy in front of him can definitely tell.
Well, like you had just said earlier in this, that, you know, it's so much of it is just posing, like posturing.
And
you know,
he wasn't posing anymore. He was very vulnerable. He was very human, and it was time to quit. And thankfully, he did.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, it's just funny, like looking through in our era of fighting and realizing like the same issues that, you know, did ultimately plague Ali at the end of his career were still prevalent. You know, I mean, hell, Bernard Hopkins, like, I think you're right. He's going to fight until somebody really beats him.
Well, I mean, Sergey Kovalev finally did beat him up. Like, he didn't knock him out though, and I think that's actually. I mean, it's speculation, obviously, but I feel like maybe pride plays into it for guys like Ali or B-Hop, where you've never been knocked out. You've never been beat up, so why quit? Like, Ali didn't get knocked out ever. He got stopped against Larry Holmes, I think. And B-Hop has never been stopped. Well, I think he got knocked out his very first fight, but he came back out of prison, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that was completely...
But Kovalev beat him up, had him on the ropes pretty bad in the last round, and I think that was his come-to-Jesus moment. I think he is going to retire now, but... I mean, that's the path of every old fighter. Like, Ali fought Archie Moore early in his career. Archie Moore, his nickname when he was a young man was the Old Mongoose. Well, nobody even fucking knows how old he was. Like,
because everything about Archie Moore was sketchy. I mean, I remember hearing stories like he was the guy that would fight in one city and then hop immediately into a car and drive across town to somewhere else and fight again under a different name.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's very true. Like, guys did that. Like, that's how you collected paydays and stuff. And I'm pretty sure, I think it was Archie Moore, or... Yeah, I think it was him that they couldn't even confirm what year he was born.
It's nuts.
And he started out like a middleweight or something, somehow ended up heavyweight, Sure, I'll fight Muhammad Ali in my late 40s. Why not?
Got paid.
Yeah, he got paid.
No, it's interesting because you see in other sports, like Kobe Bryant just retired this year. And that's a perfect example of a guy who really did realize, okay, my skills are diminishing. He could easily have hung on played for 5 more years if he was willing to come off the bench and not be the star. But I think he realized that so much of it is if you can't show up with that alpha dog mentality, like, don't show up, because you can't, ascend to that level unless you have that much confidence. Yeah. And obviously, a guy like Kobe Bryant probably took a lot of that from seeing Ali and how he handled himself, and, and so it's good to see athletes getting out before it becomes an embarrassment like that, because it has nothing to do with, like, the athlete accomplished enough, like, leave it alone. Let your legacy take over.
Well, I feel the same way about, like, franchises and storytelling and things like that. As I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize the value of a good ending.
Yeah,
like I feel like having a good bookend to, like, a career or something it's extremely valuable. It's like a really beautiful thing, but it's almost made more beautiful by how scarce it is. like Bill Watterson. Like, not to throw things off in a weird tangent, but Bill Watterson is the guy that made Calvin and Hobbes, the newspaper comic. To me, he's like one of the gold standards for quitting while you're ahead. Like,
yeah, I think in modern times, Ricky Gervais has perfected that. Oh, yeah? I don't think he ever does anything more than 3 seasons. Or no, 2 seasons, and then he does a special, usually, wrap it up.
Is that him, or is that British television? Because I know
British television in general does that, but I think that's always been him, because he believes at a certain point you just have to let it go. And, I mean, honestly, with The American Office, you see why I think he avoids that. Because even though he was a producer, that was 100% make money off of it. Why not? Sit back, get paid for nothing. That sounds like a sweet gig.
Yeah.
But you see, that show went on for like 15 years or 15 seasons or something, like ridiculous. And I think that's always been his biggest fear. And I mean, it was really telling in Extras, where the whole second season of it delves with him being on a sitcom that's terrible, and they just keep extending it and stretching it as far as it'll go. And I think that's always been something that concerned him. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that too. Just like, as great as the ride is, like, I know, because the reality is I think a lot of people disagree in this era too, because you look at like Game of Thrones and stuff right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Walking Dead. I watched The Walking Dead, but that's obviously been pulled as far as they can possibly go with it. It depends what you want from it. I mean, to be honest, Jurassic World was a fun movie. It wasn't as timeless as, the first one.
Yeah, I mean, it was the equivalent of a fan film. It gave you exactly what you wanted, especially if you were a young person when you saw the first one.
Yeah.
But no, I think a neat beginning and an end are something that are really hard to come by. But man, I really appreciate the few times you get it. Like, it just feels so good knowing that something's history is complete. Like, especially when it comes to fighters and stuff like that. Like, I like the historical aspect of boxing. That's a huge part of what drew me to it. And like, it's amazing being able to look back on someone's body of work,
right?
Knowing that that's all there is. That's all there ever will be. And I don't know. I feel like guys like Gotti, I think you're right. Like part of it does play into the audience expectation.
Yeah.
Where Gotti like would have this rhythm to his fights where you could tell when the crowd would get loud. Either his brain would turn on or it would turn off. But in either case, he would spring to life. And I think that's what kept him coming back, was knowing that there's an expectation that Gotti's fighting, it's going to be this.
Well, I mean, you see that with like WWE wrestlers all the time, where you'll never experience the thrill of that pop you get when you walk out on and do your intro.
Yeah.
And for a lot of those guys, like, that's what pulls them back throughout their entire life, is they just cannot escape that. I think the wrestler Mickey Rourke did a wonderful job of showing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it comes back to the individual aspect of the performance, where boxing involves two men, two people, two women, whatever.
Yeah, nowadays.
And wrestling is very much the same way, where the spotlight is on you. And will you ever get that in your daily life? Probably not. But these are people. This is a whole crowd of people who are there to be entertained by you.
Right. Which is a crazy thought.
I can't imagine what that would feel like.
Yeah, and to, in Ali's case, always show up for it. Even in the worst moments, like, he was trying his best. I mean, that's the sad truth, is he just got propped up, put out there too long. And I guess what's amazing about him is he did find a way to transition after that, as best he could. Unfortunately, the Parkinson's robbed us of some of that.
Yeah.
But he still, traveled and, did as much as he could beyond, even when that spotlight was removed somewhat.
Well, even when he became less vocal, and, there was even some debate if he was even capable of speaking, like in later stage of his life. As a symbol, he means so much to so many people.
Yeah, and sadly too, it probably had a huge impact on the downfall of boxing now too. I think so many people growing up and seeing that and realizing how much of a toll it played on him.
Yeah,
and
actually seeing it, like, this is what it looks like after.
Yeah, and we're starting to see that with football now too.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, that's unfortunately the biggest thing going right now in that sport that nobody really talks about in the locker room. But
well, yeah, I mean, boxing is definitely being put under the magnifying glass as well. It always has been, in fact.
Right.
There's always disputes regarding the weight of the gloves, the amount of padding. When Kim Duk-gu was killed in 1982 or 81, they reduced the 15-round championship round limit to 12, and to this day it's still 12.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you've mentioned in the past that even like bare knuckles considered at times, just because it changes the way you fight.
Yeah, there've been a lot of think pieces put out there in recent times about bare knuckle fighting, that the psychological aspect of it, knowing that your hands are your only weapon, and knowing that all you'd have to do to break your hand is hit someone wrong in the forehead with a bare hand, and then you're deprived of your weapon. It changes the way you throw the punch, and it changes the way you fight, essentially.
Yeah, you can make the same argument with football. Like, obviously, padding is essential, but they do say, like, teaching proper tackling techniques.
Yeah, wrapping tackles.
Yeah, you see in rugby, like, the reason they don't have nearly as much of this concussion issue is because you don't have the pads, and therefore you learn how to properly tackle.
It becomes a risk-reward issue.
Exactly. You're really going to pay for it rather than, in football with all the padding, you turn yourself into a human missile. Mm-hmm. And, it's ridiculous, but you get it. It's effective and it works. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a huge proponent. I believe in such things as, like, energy flow. Like, seeing people feed off of, like, things like that. Like you were discussing with, like, Gotti. I think with Ali, too, like, he just would pick up on reaction and things like that, and it would feed him. You see it all the time with Steph Curry. I think he's a perfect example of what I'm trying to convey. Oh. Where just a guy who, like, knows how to, like, feel out where he's at in a situation and just, like, rides the wave. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I felt like I saw that all the time in Ali fights. Like,
the mind games and stuff like that. He had a very good handle on how to read people and how to dick with them in just the right way, and how to maneuver them in the way that would put them off balance and play into his advantages. And I mean,
well, and I think the most telling one was the famous knockout when he declared himself the greatest.
Oh, Sonny Liston.
Yeah, I think that was just all of that just exploding out of him after, I believe that was after his hiatus.
No, that was before.
Before?
That was when he was defending the title.
Okay.
And that was also disputed. Like, that may have been mob influence. Like, that's the Phantom Punch fight. But before that, I think it was Cleveland Williams. There's two famous fights, like, in his early career. There's Ernie Terrell. Ernie Terrell was, I think, the one that refused to call him Muhammad.
Right.
So it's like a full length fight where it's just Ali slapping him for the whole night, saying, "What's my name?" And it's a hideous fight. It's I don't know. It's entertaining if you're into that kind of thing, but basically, like, Terrell's face is just swollen to shit by the end, and you could tell that Ali was just torturing him.
Right.
But the Cleveland Williams fight, I think, is my favorite one. Like, if you want to see someone put on a clinic, if you want to see Ali at his top form, holy shit. like, it's amazing where he just dances circles around him. I don't even think he throws a punch for at least a minute and a half.
Right.
And then there's just a moment where he starts opening up, and Williams just, you can see it on his face. He just has no clue where this guy's going to be or what's coming at him. And, I mean, you have to put things in perspective. Ali didn't have any body punching in his game plan.
Right.
Ever. Like, he would, like, touch you in the stomach. He'd jab you in the stomach. So you know it's coming for your face, and yet somehow you don't know what angle it's coming from or when. And I mean, that's a huge handicap on his own game plan, and yet he was that elusive and that fast and that dangerous.
And, he was just such a master of psychology.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, taunting his opponents in the press conference before the fight. God, I mean, he got in Joe Frazier's head so bad Joe Frazier hated him until the day he died.
Yeah, and I mean, I get both sides of that one.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, it was. I mean, he was just the total package, and it's a shame that he's gone, but his legacy will definitely live on. I mean,
oh, absolutely. I mean, he's one of a kind, like, as an athlete and as a human being.
And he helped us learn a lot about boxing. I feel like I truth be told, like, ever since that fateful meeting that your fist had with his face, apparently, that's when it really piqued my interest. When I could actually see, like, okay, this was a great fighter. Like, I should pay attention when his fights are on, or I don't think he wasn't fighting at the time, but, like,
classics or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. It was like, this is a man I should revere and look up to, and honestly, throughout education and whatnot, you learn more about eras and realizing how big of a deal he was. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, he transcends language. God, I mean, people around the world know his face and know his image, and like, if you just do the Ali shuffle, people know who you're referencing. It doesn't matter where you're from.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's sad to see him go, but at the same time, he'll live forever, and that's about all I can say about him.
Yeah. Just one last note. Dad used to tease me. I don't know if this is true. I never actually confronted him about it.
There's so many instances where it's big fish moment with Dad, where, the dumbest stories he would tell that you thought were, there's no way that's true. Well, it's complete bullshit. And then it turns out somebody shows up and they're like, hey, remember that time when blah, blah, blah happened? And you're like, wait, that's real?
Yeah, but Dad used to tease me about my name, because I think he said that he told his sister that he named me Tyrone over the phone.
No, that's right. Because that was during the Trevor Berbick era.
Yeah, and then he used to tease me.
He called to announce your name to Jan, and he said, yeah, I have my second son, and we've decided to name him after an up-and-coming great fighter who's going to be challenging for the heavyweight championship. And she got so mad at him because she's like, God damn it, Tom, you're going to name your kid Tyrone?
Tyrone Biggs?
Yeah, Tyrone Biggs was the other up-and-coming fighter at the time. He meant Trevor Berbick. He assumed that she would think that, but no.
But yeah, Trevor Berbick. So I very well may have the distinction of being named after the last guy to beat Muhammad Ali, or if you want to look at it a different way, the guy that Mike Tyson knocked the shit out of to win the heavyweight title a few years later.
Well, so, I'm forever going to remember him as the guy that Larry Holmes drop kicked off of a car. So
Google that.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, go straight to YouTube.
Google that
YouTube
shit.
And look that up. That is one of the greatest sports memories I will ever have. And at that, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Berbick, meanwhile, out in the streets, who sent a camera out there to check out the action.
Looks like Berbick's complaining to reporters. I think there was an altercation out in the parking lot. There's the cops with him and the reporters.
And he's saying that Larry Holmes attacked him, and look at this, Charles.
Oh, my God.
Larry Holmes with a swan dive off the top rope. Looks like something out of the WWF, and he's attacking Trevor Berbick right there at the valet parking ramp.